welcome to our bonus episode of the week. Mike was just laughing at me. It's a classic character profile.
The second go recording this intro. I just had to scroll down just a couple of lines to not confuse you, didn't I?
We're talking about Vernon Tomlin.
Vernon Tomlin, eh? Hey, Gemma, is he who's your favourite character? No. Is he anybody's favourite character? I don't know, but we're going to talk about him anyway.
Write in if he's your favourite character.
Right, let us know. In Reddington, you're not allowed to apply for this.
No.
Is Vernon Tomlin your favourite character on Coronation Street? If so, why? I think he's kind of okay.
I like this character.
I've got fond memories of him.
Yeah.
I think at the time, and we're talking back in late 2000s, he was just kind of there, and he was a bit sad.
I liked him. He was a dreamer.
Yeah.
He was a coaster, and I don't mean for your tea. I mean somebody who just flows through life. They don't make ripples. They just kind of push forwards.
Well, he was a feckless Corrie man, wasn't he?
Exactly.
But I think at the time, I tolerated that he was there. I kind of liked him. I can't say that I was disappointed when he went. And when I look back on him, I go, oh yeah, there was Vernon. Wasn't it? There was Vernon for 3 years. But if that's also where your memory is at the moment and you need a bit of a refresh, or maybe if you have never even seen him on screen before, I hope you are ready to do some learning about Vernon with us this evening. I didn't prep Gemma for that one, but I knew I wanted to say that one. Is this standing a negative start? I don't mean it to be, but he's an all right character who has probably been lost in the annals of history, but he fulfilled his purpose indeed, and we are going to celebrate and praise that in tonight's podcast. So let's just get cracking with saying all we can say about Vernon, including that we don't know when his birthday is, tragic, but we do know that he married Liz McDonald in 2007, more on that later. He made his first appearance on the 2nd of December 2005, so we're coming up on 18 years since we've known Vernon, and made his final appearance on the 22nd of September 2008. He was in 238 episodes of Coronation Street during that period, and as I said before, he was played by Doctor Who's chief clown, Ian Reddington. And that's just for a few more. Listen to last week. I'm in a funny mood with this evening. I don't know how long it's going to last, because I think a lot of this episode's going to be more kind of reading and seeing what my notes say, because I don't... Vern is a character that I know that I watched. I must have seen every single episode with him in. But do I actually have any memories of watching him? I don't know.
I do.
I don't know.
I don't think he's as forgettable as you're making out.
Maybe I'm being harsh on him. I apologise for that. And after all that, what?
Corrie was a bit cruel to him, really, but he just knew what he wanted out of life, which was not a great deal. Which, can we all not respect that? In a capitalist society where we're all primed to consume and buy and live luxurious lives and bigger houses, more things, more stuff, eat this, go there, read that. He just had a guitar and he liked sexy ladies.
Yeah, he didn't have a guitar. He had a set of drums. He was a little drummer boy.
He played a guitar to play a song. Well? He was a musician.
He was.
He was a creative soul. He produced. He didn't consume. He produced. And we should all be more like Vernon.
I think that part of my issue and of not remembering things about Vernon is that period of second half of the first decade of the 21st century is a real kind of not blank part, but so at the moment in classic Coronation Street they're just at the end of 2003. So I've just been watching like the early 2000s, the 90s, and before that, I'm not going to claim to be any expert of, but we were kind of watching in earnest some of the older episodes, weren't we? So there's just this little pre-podcast period where I know what happened, but because we haven't seen any of it, well, barely any of it since it was on, it's understandable if we have maybe forgotten a bit.
You were in the throes of beginning your very intense career in education.
I was, yes.
So perhaps not as much time to focus on extraneous...
I mean, we watched it. I
know, but you weren't sort of focused on it as much as you are now.
I don't know. There was some good stuff there. There was... Yeah. Anyway.
I'm trying to
excuse my lack of passion for Vernon. But I do kind of like him. and I know I'm kind of going a bit of back and
Ian
forth.
Reddington?
So Ian Reddington, he studied at RADA, don't you know? That's
Why do we look? I don't even know what it's.
RADA.
Do you know what it stands for?
Royal
Academy of Dramatic Arts.
I
Probably.
think it probably is. I'm going to say that.
I don't know what it is, but I can just in my head. I don't know where it came from. Here, RADA, darling.
Yeah, it seems like the ones that the proper actors go to, isn't it?
Oh dear, we're gonna get beaten up.
Not only that, but he was also in the RSC, the Royal Shakespeare Company, which he joined in 1978, and he made his first TV appearance as a fire inspector in a show called Sharon and Eddie in. I've written here 1894. Yes, I'm allowed to pick apart the mistakes in my notes,
but
I'm guessing it's probably 1994. Or it could have been 1984. It must have been 1984 because this was before he played Chief Clown in The Greatest Show in the Galaxy, the Doctor Who serial that we talked about last week. He also played a corrupt, womanising market inspector, Richard Cole, in EastEnders between 1992 and 1994, and I find that quite interesting because he was apparently the original Tricky Dicky way before Richard Hillman ever popped into Coronation Street.
Okay.
What? He was Tricky Dicky.
Okay, yep, next.
What? Okay.
Next, yep.
And he was in the Bill a lot as well. He's been in loads of things.
Is there something...
And he still is.
I always think with actors,
Not
how would you feel if you got typecast as like an incredibly unpleasant way? Like, what is it about him that makes him look like a seedy womanizer?
I think I don't know whether Vernon is his biggest role, but it's the only thing
energy?
I've seen him in. But he was very, very good at playing a bit of a sleazy slime ball, wasn't he?
Yeah, he can do that kind of leer.
Yeah, but he wasn't a villain in any way.
No.
He was definitely work shy and a bit of a waster, and he was a bit of a ducker and a diver, and if he could avoid a hard day's work in any way possible, he would. But
I think
in a way, that was one of the things that made him love it. It's a bit like Tim. He was a bit of a pre-Tim, wasn't he? And I wonder whether, if we were doing the podcast back then, you'd have held Vernon in as much disdain as you do for Mr. Metcalfe now.
Well, first of all, in a capitalist society that's killing the planet, the correct moral choice is to do the minimum amount possible.
Is it?
Yeah.
Reduce the carbon footprint.
Reduce
just
your
sit
carbon
around.
footprint by not doing anything. But here's my other question. What do you think? Do you think there's any character that you could call a womanizer?
Well, what?
Who's just a normal character on Corrie? Now?
I mean, Adam is probably the closest, maybe.
No, he's not, though.
Not anymore, but maybe he's an ex-womanizer. Yeah,
I don't think we do womanizers on Corrie anymore, because I think that...
I don't think womanizing is celebrated.
No, I don't think men have changed, but I think that the idea that chasing after this, bit of stuff in skirts is a funny, good thing to do. That's not
talking about bits of stuff in skirts. Vernon's character is inexorably tied to Liz McDonald, isn't he? We said that they got married, and the story of Vernon really is the story of Vernon and Liz.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that I think I did like about it, is that they were put together as complete opposites. It's almost like they didn't fit each other, and he was so worlds away from Jim, who Coronation Street fans thought, despite his numerous flaws, was very, very much good for Liz, and the soulmate of Liz. And I found it really interesting how they decided to go completely the opposite direction to the kind of man that we were used to Liz courting. And then it kind of all went wrong because he just wasn't the type of guy for her.
How do you think they're not suited to one another?
Because she liked someone who was a hard man who would kind of treat her rough,
Well, no.
Not in the same way that Jim would, beat her up a couple of times.
No.
But someone who would, someone who knew what he wanted and was hard and firm and tough. And this is Jim.
Ambitious.
Yeah, yes, but also somebody who'd probably fling around the bedroom in a sexy kind of way. And
masculine.
Yeah, exactly.
Quite rough around the edges.
Yeah. I mean, we know what Jim McDonald was like.
I'm just trying to articulate it.
I thank you very much for helping my articulation.
Do you not think that Jim was a bit more ambitious than Vernon? I mean, getting out of bed in the morning is slightly more ambitious than Vernon at times, isn't it?
Well, but Jim was very disciplined, wasn't he?
Yes,
it
he's been in the army.
From his army days, and he knew
correct.
he knew what made
Driven.
Yeah, exactly, and he
Knew what he wanted.
He liked things ship shape, and he knew how to polish his shoes. And Vernon was just happy to drift along in life.
Didn't even know what he wanted, and he certainly didn't know how to get it.
No,
because he never ended up with it, did he?
Well, I think he was driven by the idea of fame and wanting to do well with his band. He was absolutely a romantic. And I think it wasn't like he wanted to be famous in the same way as these days, 15 minutes of fame.
Make money.
He just wanted to make money from his passions and his loves, which was music. But
I really like
didn't
Vernon.
necessarily want to try really, really hard to make it happen.
Yeah,
Not that
what
it's easy to make it happen if you just try hard. That's the problem. Being in the creative arts industry, if you really, really want something, it doesn't guarantee at all that you're going to get it. But he probably could have pushed himself just a little bit harder in some elements of his career. So let's take a look back at some of Vernon's most memorable moments, or
just talk about
just
what he did
every
in the show.
single moment that he did in the show. And he came in as just a short-lived character, didn't he? His casting was revealed on the 3rd of November 2005, and he signed up for a 3-month stint, so it was very much a case of let's test him out. And then they ended up liking him and kept him going for a bit longer, that we've seen with countless characters on Coronation Street before.
And this is where it gets revealed. I don't know how they do it now, but that Corrie really is made up as it goes along. I know that seems obvious, but there's a lot of forward planning that goes into it, but there's also lots of let's see how this goes, let's see what happens here, and sometimes that really pays off because you can find gold,
particularly if you see some chemistry between the characters. And Vernon and Liz, as much as the characters weren't suited for each other romantically, although some might say that Vernon was the kind of man that Liz needed, and she didn't need somebody who was going to fling around the bedroom, and she didn't need somebody who was going to hold a building society up at gunpoint to try and prove his love for her, and she didn't need somebody who was going to knock 7 bells out of her when he had a few too many to drink.
What you want and what you need is not the same thing, is it?
Yeah.
So she meets him in 2005 at the Weatherfields Traders Association dinner dance. He's the drummer in the band who are playing. And Diggory, who is
Diggory Compton.
Yeah, Diggory Compton. He's the baker. He's Molly's dad. He gets annoyed by this because he's got a soft spot for Liz, and he gets drunk, and then he resigns as president of the association. So she starts seeing Vernon, and she tells Deirdre, who's her busy mate, she thinks he's the one. But Steve gets frustrated because Vernon's a layabout, and he's leaving his drums around, being a bit useless and not really helping around the house.
Yeah, Steve at this point was absolutely a grown man, wasn't he? But he didn't like the idea that this guy who was hanging about his mum was seemingly so much more immature and useless and hadn't got his act together in life. And he thought that his mum deserved somebody better. I can't remember at that point whether Steve was in the let's get Liz, the mum and dad back together camp, or whether he thought that they were better apart. But
I will say the younger Steve was, the more business driven he was.
Yeah, and I'm going to say back in 2005 he had certainly not. He wasn't the Steve that we know now. The
Steve that we know now would be busy mates with Vernon. He'd think he was brilliant. He'd be hanging off his every word in the pub as Vernon gets drunk and tells him all about his life on the high seas and drumming and laying about. He'd think that was fantastic. But back in the day, Steve took after his dad slightly more than...
Yeah, he didn't think that he was good enough for his mum. Who is good enough for Liz McDonald?
No one.
Let's say. So 2006, he goes off on a cruise with Liz in January, though she ends up coming back without him, and that was kind of the end of the original Vernon stint. But a couple of... What?
I was just going to say, I think it's a bit of a callback to Corrie's musical history that we have such a weirdly disproportionate number of people that work on the cruise ships, considering that Manchester's nowhere near a port.
Yeah, people always make such a thing about, what's the crime rate like in Weatherfield? How many murders have there been?
Yeah.
Does anybody say, hang on a minute, why do so many people work on the cruise ships in Coronation Street?
We literally live in Southampton, and I know one person who works at Carnival but we are like the home of cruises in this country, and we like know fewer people than.
To be fair, we don't know that many people, do we?
Not really, no. But it is funny because I was just thinking, him and Glenda, they'd get on, wouldn't they?
Yeah,
they'd have a few stories.
They should just have another cruise ship special and have him and Glenda, and Jenny was on the cruise ships, wasn't she? Alec Gilroy, of course, on the cruise ships.
Well, Kieran and Michelle.
Yeah, exactly.
Lots of people or either love going on cruises or work on the cruise ships.
Yeah. Anyway,
that's a bonus episode in itself, surely.
Yeah.
Corrie goes cruising.
So she ends up coming back without him from this cruise ship. I can't remember why, but he turns up in March again, much to Steve's annoyance, because he thought, so long, good riddance to that no good waster. But he's asked to move out into number 12, which is where they were living at the moment, after he tells Liz that his landlord has chucked him out. So not only is Vernon back, he's living with the family as well. Steve, not at all pleased. Vernon then starts, we find out more about his band that they've been touring around. Do you know what his band's
called?
I don't remember whether they probably did have a name. I haven't got it down here, I don't think. You can start to have a look if you want to. But he starts holding auditions in the Rovers to find a replacement. And maybe this is where my slight distaste for Vernon comes from, because he's the one responsible for bringing Michelle Connor into the show. Definitely a character that I've had issues with in the past. But yeah, he's doing these auditions there. Liz is pretty narked that all the candidates are females. They're all young and sexy, but luckily they're all rubbish. So Vernon says, well, Liz, you got a good pair of pipes on you. Why don't you have a go yourself? And he is just about to give Liz this job when Michelle turns up and absolutely smashes it, which was always kind of funny because back in the day I was thinking, there's Kim Marsh from Hearsay, or Kim, whatever her name was back then, from Hearsay. And also, very, very good singer. I wouldn't say that... I would never say Liz, lead singer of the band. I don't put those two together particularly. But anyway, so this is how Michelle comes into the show. And Liz gets very, very wary of Vernon's intentions towards Michelle. She's a good-looking woman. He's a bit of a perv. And soon, she is convinced that Michelle wants to get her claws into Vernon as well. But she follows them to a flat one day, but discovers that Michelle's just showing him round because he's interested in letting it. Liz is then chuffed when Vernon asks her to move in with him, but admits that she doesn't actually fancy that particular flat, so they find another one. Gosh, this is thrilling, isn't it? This lasts all about one episode or so because the landlord doesn't want him staying there with his drum kit, so they move back to number 12.
The Rock Rhythm Rascals.
The Rock Rhythm Rascals was the name of Vernon's band. There you go.
The Rock Rhythm Rascals.
Rascals, they're rascally. So, Liz, brilliant. She just finds out that Vernon's written a song for her, but is rather put out when he sells it to Kirk to sing to Fizz.
It's not every day you can sell a song.
No, exactly.
He's doing a good
You said
job.
He wasn't business-minded, Gemma. Well, there you go. I'll prove you wrong.
A lot of
That's a lot of entrepreneurial nous, isn't it?
Yeah.
So now it's
what does she want from him?
It's Kirk songs for Fizz. So Vernon gets a job in Streetcars.
Just say he's got the integrity to sell the song to Kirk and not sing it to Liz on the sly, which is what I would have done. I'd be like, Liz, listen, but don't tell anyone.
I don't know. No, maybe we should have looked this up. But is it a song where literally Liz and Fizz have been switched?
I can only imagine that is the case. And we know that
you really are the biz. I really love your Fizz, Liz. It's like that kind of thing.
Yeah. I think you're in the biz.
Yeah.
Kirk is a bit of a songwriter himself, so this must have been a truly amazing...
Maybe Vernon was the inspiration for Kirk.
I mean, Kirk probably thought, if he can do it, I can.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Inspirational.
So inspirational. So Vernon gets a job in Streetcars because that's where all the layabouts basically end up working in Coronation Street, aren't they? He joins the ranks of the likes of Les Battersby, Tim.
Can I just say something?
Yes.
Where is the job for the layabout woman?
There's no layabout women
it's
in
not fair,
Coronation
is it?
Street, Gemma. Everyone is hard working.
They're all hard grafters.
If they all stopped
for their
to drop dead, everyone else would fall apart.
Exactly. But all the men can just congregate in streetcars and sit around all day pontificating.
I think the lazy women go to the factory.
They just pick up pants.
Yeah, they just pick up pants all day. So anyway, he's working at streetcars, and I've lost where I am in the notes there completely. And
she's not happy.
He's not happy. He's scrounging about.
He wants to be a scrounger.
She gets Liz, so Steve, to give him a job at streetcars.
He doesn't want to work there.
No. So he lies to her one day, and I've tried really hard to get my head around this story, and I think I got it right. So he decides to pretend that his van has been stolen with a load of his own old records in. He was he had a load of records and stock that he was going to sell at a market, but he makes out it's been stolen. Liz thinks that she was the one that left it unlocked and feels super guilty about this, and so buys him a Gene Chandler vinyl for £100 to compensate. But then she realises he's been lying about the van when she finds the records that he's claiming were stolen, because he wanted to try and claim them on the insurance, and he breaks the... What goes on? I can't even... See, I wrote these notes 2 months ago. I was supposed to be doing this 2 months ago, so I do apologise if I sound like I know what I'm talking about, even less than...
So she finds out, this is what I think is happened. She found out that he lied.
She breaks, yeah, that's right.
Broke the
she
record
breaks his record.
To get revenge and say, if you want this one I bought you can give me 200 quid for it.
Exactly it. Thank you very much for correcting my notes yet again. So, Liz...
Oh, I can't win, can I?
You can't win. If you correct me when I'm in the mood for it, that's fantastic. Don't point it out. If I want my correcting. Right, so Liz finds out that Vernon has arranged a trial shift for Michelle at the Rovers. So he's not just content with having her in his band, he wants her in the pub as well. He even makes a pass at her, which she rejects. But still, he carries on flirting while Liz is away. And there's even a scene where he strips down to his pants one day and wanders around the Rovers after hours one evening, thinking that Michelle's up for a bunk up with him. But, unfortunately for him, he walks in on Sean and Betty instead. And Michelle, finding out about what an old perv Vernon is, decides to quit the band.
I mean, if he's so horny... Either of those people we could have bunked up with.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true.
They were both probably up for it.
No, I think Sean and Betty have got standards. Liz finds out what he's been up to when she comes back, chucks all his stuff, drum kit included,
that was
out
loud.
of the Rover's window onto the street and dumps him. And that's the last we see of Vernon for a couple of months. But he does turn up later on in the year with flowers and a balloon that says, "I love Liz." And it doesn't take her long to be won round, much to Steve's annoyance. The story of Vernon is basically Steve getting his hopes up that he's seen the back of Vernon, and then he comes back again. So Steve gives Vernon the potman and cellarman's job at the Rovers, which Vernon doesn't really enjoy because he was hoping to just take the opportunity to skive off a bit longer, and now he's been given some work to do. He gets punched in the face from Jamie in one episode because he makes a dig about his and Frankie's relationship. When that all comes out, that's a different story that I'm not going to go into. And he ends the year, fortunately for him, in Liz's good books, because he takes credit for the candles and champagne in the back room on New Year's Eve, which is actually something that Steve had set up in the hope of bringing Michelle home. So,
what a beautiful romance.
Yeah.
2007, Liz agrees to quit smoking for Vernon, but she goes back on the promise when she finds out what actually had happened for the New Year's surprise. Sad. Vernon continues to shirk work at every opportunity, and he gets some tips from Jack about how to make it look like he's working. And then one day, the street gets evacuated.
I think I remember this.
What's the tip? What tips have you got? I don't need to, do you?
No, I wouldn't know how to make it look like I'm working because I'm working all the time. But I'm kind of... No, I don't know.
One good thing is always to be looking at the BBC News website. To be like, I'm just trying to find news about important things.
Now, this next bit I think I remember.
So, the street gets evacuated when they find a World War II bomb in the back garden number 4, and everyone gets kicked out. He finds himself alone in the street after stumbling out of the cellar. He'd been hiding in there, and Liz is not very impressed because she was worried that, I don't know, he'd gone missing or died.
There's a scene where he's kind of stumbles out the Rovers and it's completely empty and it's like an apocalyptic scene. He's like, where is everybody? Just because he's been hiding away down in the cellar.
I mean, she didn't know how right she was to be worried because she didn't know that there were sinkholes everywhere.
Very true.
Steve fires him from streetcars after he's sent out on a job, and he ends up spending the night at a party. And but this backfires because now Vernon's unemployed, he decides to start up an academy of drumming upstairs in the Rovers.
Tell you what, know who else was a drum teacher, started off an academy?
I don't know, who?
Kel.
Who's Kel?
Kel, Bernie Kel, Paul's stepdad, Kel.
Meanwhile, Liz is getting more and more fed up with Vernon, and she starts flirting with Derek, who is the delivery man. Vernon's obviously threatened by this, so he tells Liz he's a changed man. He proposes to her. She accepts, but she's clearly not that into it. And this is the tragedy of Vernon, isn't it?
Yeah.
He loved Liz so much, and all he cared about just very few things in the world, and she was one of them. But she was never that into him.
She
really.
can't. The thing with
wanted
Liz,
a man.
she was the sort of person who always needs to have a man on her arm,
she
doesn't
needed it
she?
to be in a relationship. She didn't know who she was if she wasn't going out with somebody. And Vernon was there. That's really it. Vernon was always there, and he always was quite enthusiastic about her, which is flattering, isn't it?
And I think she did see the good in him, because he was harmless at the end of the day. Yeah, sometimes he'd walk around the pub in his pants in the hope of
he was obviously
catching Michelle in a bit of a horny mood.
Yeah,
but he was a
great,
decent guy at the end of the day.
Well, as decent
with his faults, with a few little foibles. And Liz was like, yeah, I think maybe it is time for me to settle down. She knew that she wasn't the young, flirty 20-year-old something. Yeah, exactly, that she always was. And I think
Vernon
she thought...
came with a refreshingly little amount of baggage, really.
Yeah, exactly.
He didn't have ex-wives and kids hanging on him,
No, I
did he?
don't think so.
So
he this to Liz maybe felt like, you know what, maybe the time of life has come for me to settle down with a kind of normal
companion,
decent companion. And yeah, so maybe he's a bit useless. Yeah, so maybe his drumming drives me up the wall. But
you know,
it could
she
be
earns
worse.
money. She's got somewhere to live. What does she need him to go out and be a go-getter for?
But yeah, her head is turned by this Derek the delivery man, isn't it?
That's right. So she's accepted his proposal. He borrows £100 to take Liz out for dinner, but he gets drunk before the meal.
Just the good guy, like us.
He's just got no downsides whatsoever. He's just a normal guy. He passes out in the back room.
We've all done it, haven't we, lads?
And Liz is there at the restaurant wondering why he hasn't turned up. So she calls Derek and spends the evening with him.
Now, Derek is the guy who, I don't remember even what he looks like, but what I think a lot of people do remember of Derek is that famous scene where Liz gets stranded out on a balcony, doesn't she? So he lived in this high-rise flat, and she's round his flat one time in a bit of a, not very much, and sexy negligee. And I think the scene is like his wife comes home earlier than... he's expecting, and she has to then go out on the balcony, and she's there in this really skimpy nightie. Well done to Beverly Callard for just giving it a go, and she's there just for the whole world to see. Well, probably again thinking, I'm too old for this. This maybe is what I used to find quite fun, but now these days it's like, no, this is just all a bit embarrassing.
Well, this is kind of interesting because in a way, both of these characters were kind of stuck in a Arrested Development, aren't they?
Mm.
She's always been accused of mutton dressed as lamb. She's always been very flirty and kind of emotionally immature when it comes to relationships. And he's a guy that's never managed to sort of find an anchor in life.
Mm.
And between the two of them, it's kind of a disaster just waiting to happen, isn't it?
I think Liz is the kind of person who Vernon probably had like page 3 calendars of, you know, I can imagine him when he was younger, sending off, collecting his tokens in the sun and sending off for one of those.
Is that what you did?
And no, although I did know somebody when I was growing up whose dad had some of those in his garage.
What did you say they were?
Page 3 calendars.
Oh God.
And so Vernon thought he'd hit the jackpot, I think.
Well, he's sexy, sexy lady.
Yeah.
And you know, I know he was after Michelle, but this is the question: was he after Liz because he couldn't get Michelle? I guess so. I'm always, the thing is, I give men a pass when they go after women of their own age. I kind of feel that gives you a bit of integrity, which is such a low bar and so tragic. But you know what I mean? Like a guy that's constantly chasing younger women, I always go a big question mark. But at least he was after an age appropriate beau for his life.
Well, Belle.
Belle.
Anyway, this Derek and Liz whirlwind love affair carries on for a little bit longer, doesn't it? But then Derek's wife Linda smells a rat, and Liz confesses to her, "Yeah, I've been doing the dirty. I've been having an affair with your husband, but honestly,
I'm
it's
the other
over."
woman. It's over. Linda storms off. Liz is left terrified that Vernon's going to find out. I mean, really, Vernon's not done anything wrong here, has he? He tried to get Michelle.
He's tried to do things wrong. It's not through wanted trying.
Does that give
He's
him
just a massive loser. I can't believe we've got 30 minutes into this episode without using the word loser to describe Vernon. But that's basically, if you look it up in the dictionary, if you look the word loser up in the dictionary, you're going to have a picture of Vernon, aren't you? It's just sad. Maybe I do have a bit of a soft spot for him.
This is why I think I liked him, because you knew that Liz was sort of taking advantage in a way. Because she knew no matter what would happen, he'd take her back.
Yeah.
And she always had
a sad puppy, wasn't he?
Backup plan. And she didn't treat him that well.
Not really.
But then he was a bit of a womanizer himself. So.
I think that if Vernon had maybe treated her better, it wouldn't have ended the way it had. But I don't know.
I did like their relationship because it was just two hapless idiots, wasn't it? Like, they're just so unsuited to one another, but they just were determined to try to make this work, even though it was like trying to drive a cart with no wheels.
Yeah. It wasn't, we see like other couples that are very unsuited. It doesn't happen much. Sometimes there's characters that the writers think are suited, but we just, as the viewers, don't get on with them.
That's more common.
It's not very often that you get characters that are put together that clearly this has got disaster written all over it. And yes, you got your own, you got your one night stands that you think, what on earth was I thinking? But then you got the likes of, say, Curly and Raquel, who were completely and utterly not suited to each other. Sadly, I have grown to see this over the years.
Well done, you've grown and changed.
I have. This is my character growth, realising that they were not suited to each other as much as
you romanticise them, yeah. But does Corrie do this anymore?
What,
push two people together that are clearly unsuitable?
Sometimes you get couples that get together and then they realise maybe they're not suited to each other, but it doesn't often, maybe not as much, feel like it comes from the characters. So we're having like Asher and Nina at the moment, aren't we? But feeling, maybe we're not suited to each other, but it feels very plot.
Yeah, realistic
heavy
than this. Vernon and Liz were like a caricatured, really or badly suited couple.
Well, yeah,
and then you get people like, say, Beth and Kirk, where on paper they don't work, but in the show they do. I think they do.
I don't think we're supposed to think they don't anyway. Yeah, but I don't think there's very many couples. I mean, another couple going back in Corrie history that some may say were not well suited, Alec and Liz. Even.
True.
And she ended up going out with him because he saved her when she went, had a bit of a breakdown and disappeared off to Tenerife or wherever it was, and he came back and offered her security and financial support and love.
Yeah, it was a very transactional relationship, but it turned out to sort of work.
It was mutually beneficial for a few years for
those are the sort of things I really like watching. I don't think Corrie does that anymore. Not recently, anyway. It's all desperate, romantic, or hopeless kind of doomed relationships. Like Sarah and Adam. Even though I don't think anyone cares about them at all. No,
you're right. It's Corrie at the moment seems like it's often
and like Ryan and Daisy. Like if only the stars would align for them. Or like Daniel and Daisy.
I suppose you might say that Daniel and Daisy at the moment are a bit not really suited to each other, and perhaps they're just realising that now.
But it's not like a light-hearted, what the hell are they doing now?
No.
It's more like a Romeo and Juliet where you're watching a car crash.
Yeah, I don't remember that in there. Was that in the Baz Luhrmann?
That was in the Baz Luhrmann one at the beginning at the petrol station.
Anyway, we digress. We need to go back to Vernon.
So Vernon sells his Northern Soul record collection to buy a surprise trip to Paris for Liz, but then Derek reveals to him that they'd been having an affair because Liz wouldn't carry on seeing him. So he was feeling vengeful and he just told Vernon everything.
I do like how Vernon occasionally made these grand romantic gestures.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Thanks. What shall I sell?
Amiibos, you could sell all
I don't have anything things
You don't
that
have
I'm
any
not
spare
vitally...
Amiibos?
I
Okay.
don't collect
What about
things
all of these
unnecessarily.
Nintendo 3DS game? What about the bongos in our attic? That
My Donkey Kong bongos, Gemma, thank you very much, are vital. Vernon didn't sell his drum kit, did he?
What about your inherited collection of stamps and coins?
Yeah, we do need to sell those. But no, it was quite nice.
Don't take me to Paris, please.
And I suppose that we said at the beginning he was a bit of a romantic at heart. I think sometimes he would give these grand gestures.
This is the problem with him though. He has not got a practical bone in his body, because really he should number one, maybe don't sell your Northern Soul record collection, get a job. And secondly, like maybe sell your record collection and use it to fund your education to get a better job. I don't know. Don't take her to Paris.
But he has just found. Has he? No, this was before he finds out about.
Yeah, then
Derek,
he finds out. So
so
Liz is begging him to forgive her.
I think probably he's sensing that Liz's mind is elsewhere.
Well, he's trying to win her over desperately. That's what this is all along. It's always him trying to impress her, not the other way around. That's how you can tell where the power lies in this relationship.
Oh yeah.
And so he decides to move to Marbella. I don't know where that is. Spain?
I'm going to say Spain. It sounds kind of Spanish to me.
It's only when he hears his and Liz's favourite song in the taxi on the way to the airport, because Liz sneaked a mixtape to Lloyd, he decides to come back and they reunite.
Hurrah!
Did he buy a ticket? Is he now blown his money on a ticket to Marbella and a romantic getaway for tea to Paris? And now he's got nothing. Anyway, he books the register office for New Year's Eve so he can marry her. And at the beginning of December, they do end up going on a trip to Paris for her 50th birthday. And 50 is so close to where I am right now. I'm thinking, oh no, but I am a layabout like Vernon. Do I need to get my act together?
You're not close to 50, but
I'm not going to say it's not I was when this was on TV.
Yeah. It is going to spring up on us before we know it.
It's not that old.
It's alright, because I think when we were younger, 50 seemed like really old, but we've seen our parents go through it. We've seen kind of...
Go through it like it's some kind of ordeal.
Yeah, it's like the metaphors, isn't it? We've seen Coronation Street actors that we kind of grew up with going through it, and they're doing great guns, aren't they?
I don't think 50 is old anymore.
No.
Which is...
But that's what 40-year-olds say.
Word spreads that Jim is out of prison, and Vernon promises to protect her if he shows up on the street.
This is one of Jim's many returns to the street after getting banged up.
So Jim appears on the street, and Steve gives him a job at Streetcars on the condition that he stays away from Liz and Vernon. And Jim says he's a changed man, I swear I won't. And when Liz goes to see him, he says he's a changed man and he's happy for them. And Vernon meets up with him and thinks, oh, this guy's actually quite nice. But it's clear to the viewers that Jim is going to try and split this couple up.
Like I said earlier, despite really, really not being suited to each other in many ways, Liz and Jim are 100% suited to each other. And if I was kind of making a ranking of couples that are most belong together,
suited is the right word.
Not suited, but I think they belong to each other. There's some kind of
terrible magnetism.
If there was absolutely magnetism between the two of them.
She was an abused wife. We can't. In hindsight, we can see that this story would not have happened the way it did. If it was on Corrie now, it would not be, But I think thousands of years of romanticising abusive relationship is a hard thing to shake for our culture. Don't you think? I think it's only recently that we're really understanding what abuse is.
When it was good, it was very good between them, and I think
it's an unhappy fact that Liz loved Jim and Jim loved Liz, and they were terrible for one another.
I can't remember what the general feeling from viewers was back then about, are we on Team Vernon or are we on Team Liz?
Jim.
Sorry, Team Jim, yeah. I think I was always kind of Team Liz and Jim. Although back then I probably wasn't quite so conscious of all the stuff that had happened in the early 90s between them.
Jim's also a much more compelling and charismatic character than Vernon was, because Vernon was always portrayed as this lacklustre layabout, dilly-dallyer. And Jim was a very direct, masculine, energy. It's so toxic, and it goes to show you how recently these things were portrayed in the media. And I'm not blaming anyone for it, because I also think the way we think about relationships now is gonna change as we learn more things about psychology and trauma and stuff. But it's really fascinating to see how this played out and it feels like very much of its time, which is one of the things I like about soaps.
Yeah,
is it tells stories about how people
were back
see
then,
themselves
in the not so distant
or
past.
what was aspirational or not for the time.
Yeah.
This wasn't that long ago. So Jim's trying to formulate a plan to win Liz back, and he worms his way back into helping out behind the bar during the Christmas rush. And then Liz is, because we've got this wedding that's prepared for the end of the year, and on the morning of the wedding, Liz admits to Deirdre that Vernon does not excite her the way that Jim does. And
Vernon is not an exciting character.
This is just such a facepalm moment.
Yeah.
So Jim confronts Liz in the ginnel and tells her, Vernon's not good enough for you. They have an argument. Vernon goes out to investigate. He gets punched in the face. And Liz is like, yeah, Jim has not changed one thing. I need to stick with Vernon, because maybe he's not exciting, but maybe I don't want that much excitement in my life.
This is, again, it's definitely got shades of Raquel and Curly, hasn't it? On the morning of their wedding. Yeah. She's there crying in the toilets because she doesn't want to marry this guy for different reasons. But at the end of the day, it kind of was that he doesn't excite me. I feel like I'm compelled to marry this guy. It feels like it's the right thing for me. And it really is a lesson about don't just settle. And that's what Liz is doing. So it really was tragic. But then also as viewers, some of us are probably thinking, oh, but maybe he is good for you.
It's right that she didn't go with Jim. Though, isn't it? Either way, she's settling because she's... Look, we got to get away from this romantic idea of...
I can't help but romanticise Liz and Jim.
No, you cannot.
And I still...
Physically, he wasn't just emotionally abusive. He was physically abusive.
I know he was, but I still would have loved, because neither character had a proper ending. Liz especially. Yeah. Well, actually, neither of them did. Even Jim, he got arrested off screen, didn't he? I can't remember. I would have loved to have seen them go off together, have one final little story, and then off they go into the sunset, and we just assume everything is okay after that.
My counter proposal is that they do that with therapy. Like, they've gone to therapy.
Can you imagine Jim McDonald in therapy?
I would pay money to see that. Please, Coronation Street, make that.
And let's have Toya as the therapist.
Can you imagine her trying to tell him where he's gone wrong in his life? I need this to happen.
Let me tell you something, Toya lover in Battersby.
I remember you when you came in the show. Oh, that would be fantastic. Okay, make it happen. Anyway, they go ahead with the wedding, Vernon and Liz. He's got a black eye. Vernon finds out that Liz had been sort of chatting with, trying to decide if she was going to go with Jim or Vernon, and she nearly cancelled it. He finds out about this, but he forgives her, and they go to Nashville on honeymoon.
And again, Curly knows before he marries Raquel, because somebody's come and told him that she's crying there, but he goes through with it anyway. Slightly selfish.
It's gross.
But is it also a way of thinking, well, I can change her. I still love this.
I can spend the rest of my life trying to make her realise.
Not the best foundations for a marriage.
No, that's not how we began ours.
But I think that people. I don't think that. It probably is uncommon, but I don't think it's unrealistic that some people would do that. Getting married to somebody who you love them more than they love you, in the hope that they'll be able to change their mind.
It's not just whether you want to marry somebody; it's whether or not you believe in the institution of marriage to begin with, and not everybody does.
No.
So I like that. I really like Liz and Vernon. They're such an interesting relationship, isn't it?
I liked the portrait that they had of them that was taken at the wedding, because this was a kind of cowboy themed wedding, wasn't it? And he had his white Stetson, and they had this very white toothed photo of them put above the mantelpiece in the back room. It was done as a mega joke, really, an utter cheese moment.
But he was ahead of his time, really. Because everyone on Instagram is full of pictures of people with unhealthily white teeth.
When they're going to have somebody put a photo of them with dog ears and...
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like Tyrone and...
Oh, Alina and their exploding car portrait. Yeah, that is actually...
It's the same idea. I think we made parallels at the time.
I wonder how many like iconic bits of in-universe art
there aren't that many
in Coronation Street.
There can't be that many. There's Alf's portrait.
Yeah, Hilda's mural.
Yeah, and then these two pictures that we're talking about now.
There must be more, but I can't think of any off the cuff at the moment. There's probably some that we've noticed.
There's there's kind of notable pieces of artwork that never get remarked upon, like Carla's abstract artwork or Dev's three.
Or back in the 60s, what Ken and Valerie had in their room.
The cowboy and Jesus.
Oh yes, how could we forget the cowboy and Jesus?
How could
Absolutely.
we? The cookie picture.
What cookie picture?
The dog.
Oh,
Rover. Sorry.
Yeah.
The map of is it
Stratford upon Avon in number 1. There we go. We're able to come up with a few more. I
think they should start. I think they should do a Corrie art gallery.
Like a coffee table book of the art of Coronation Street.
They should do that because we've also got Maddie's mural.
Yeah.
And we've got the stuff that because I know that her name just went out of my head, but Craig's girlfriend.
Oh yeah, no, I can't remember. Caitlin.
They did stuff, didn't they? Was it her that made the mural?
Mm. Yeah, I think so.
Didn't Mavis fall in love with a guy that was a painter?
Oh yes.
There you go.
That wasn't Victor, was it? There was someone else, and there was a picture of Mavis that he did.
And the picture that
we'll get back to Vernon.
That Irma did that was found in the attic.
That looked like a Lowry.
Yes.
There we go. There's loads.
Oh, a coffee table book of Coronation Street art, please, for Christmas next year. Thank you very much. And if you want me to write it, email me conversationstreet@gmail.com. I'm looking for ideas.
2008 was Vernon's final year on the cobbles, and he starts it off arranging for a few of his mates to decorate the Rovers. And he draws up ideas for a smoking shelter at the back. So it's down to Vernon that we have got a smoking shelter.
I just want to say, sorry, I interrupted the end of the sentence.
That's okay.
Is that it?
Yes,
I thought it was. Okay. He is one of the few characters that has had a physical
lasting
impact
legacy
on the street that is still there to this day. There are very few people, because the street is so, crowded already. I mean, putting your name on something is one thing. Audrey's, Dev's, whatever. Yeah. But I would say Maxine, I think that's more significant because the salon could come and go and you could have a different name on it, and it's had different names on it for years. Very few people have made a physical impact on the street that remains to this day,
And the tragedy is, nobody knows.
No, Vernon made the smoking shelter. Maddie's got her mural. You've got Maxine's bench. You've got Dennis Tanner's graffiti. You've got... Tina used to have a very sad little planter outside the builder's yard.
It's still there.
Is it still? I don't think anyone cares about it. You've got Seb's garden.
Yeah.
And I think that's...
Oh, I'm sure there must be more.
But the rest of them are just businesses that exist there no matter what the characters do or don't do. Do you see what I mean? Like nobody's... Yeah. This is why Debbie was so visionary, trying to demolish half the street to make a hotel.
Anyway, so he's designing this smoking shelter, and then him and his mate start to put it together. They disappear halfway through the job because they get a job on a cruise ship, as you do in Weatherfield.
Whisk off, don't you?
Yeah, this is where all the what's it called when people clonk you over the head and then say you're in the Navy now?
Oh.
No, there's a word for that, isn't there?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Press ganging.
Press
ganged onto the cruise ship.
I've got to go be a bingo caller. God, we live pampered lives, don't we, in the modern age?
It's Jane McDonald. She comes round and drags you away.
Jane McDonald press ganging. All the people that can hold a tune in the north of England.
Yeah. Liz starts growing frustrated with Vernon's fecklessness again, starts flirting with the bookie, Harry Mason. And I do feel, I feel sorry for Vernon. Liz she wasn't that into Vernon, was she?
No.
And Harry Mason, blimey, he was a useless character. If we ever do a character profile of Harry and Dan Mason, I'm sure we will one day, but that's how you know we've really, really run out of ideas, because that was a character pair that really left no legacy on Coronation Street. Vernon develops a bit of a gambling habit around this time after he has a couple of wins on the bookies, and then he gets offered a job on a cruise ship, believe it or not, for 3 weeks, and invites Liz along. She does her best to get out of it and admits to Deirdre, I don't think I could stand 3 weeks alone with Vernon. That's how you know you've married the wrong person, isn't it? So bad for Vernon, honestly. So he comes back and he goes off on his own. Liz does her best to welcome him. She books him a night in a swanky hotel, but clearly she has still got these bubbling feelings for the admittedly much more masculine Harry Mason. Vernon says, right, he's married Liz. He thinks that they got the whole of the rest of their life together. He's got grand plans. Let's buy a bar in town. Let's get away from Steve and Michelle. Let's just have it, me and you, babe. And Liz says, she at first pretends to be keen on the idea, but clearly her heart's not in this plan, and she admits to Vernon she's not even sure she wants to be with him anymore. In fact, she should have never married him. Oh, tragic.
That's awful.
Kicking a man when he's down is like kicking a puppy, that is, isn't it?
This is what I mean. This is much more... Look, isn't this so much more interesting than Coronation Street going, look at these two really good-looking people who have got in common the status that they're good-looking. Let's make them get married, and then one of them... Then they have...
Then let's not show them for a good 6 months.
Until one of them then decides that they want to have an affair with somebody else.
Mm.
This is just this is so fascinating.
It was an interesting.
This is a much better relationship story
in Liz's romantic journey
than 90% of the relationship stories that we've had in recent years. And I'm going to say that Daisy and Daniel and Daisy and Ryan is probably the most interesting relationship story we've had for a while on Corrie. Don't you think?
I would have
it's not the same kind of thing.
I would have to weigh up the competition about that one. I don't know.
Well, I mean, yeah. It's another sort of interesting territory for bonus episodes, isn't it? Like what does Corrie modern relationship? What drama do we get?
I don't remember how much of Liz and Vernon we saw. Were they like constantly there in the background, being a bit useless?
Well, I think they must have been.
Did they go away for months and then come back again? It feels like it was a constant presence, which is not what you get with relationships on Corrie right now. They come and go when there's a storyline going on.
The reason for their ubiquity on the screen was because she was the landlady of the Quite. And Vernon lived there. And you don't get that anymore because the Rovers is hardly in it because it's closed.
So Vernon's just been told by his new wife that she doesn't want to be married to him anymore. So he packs his things, leaves the pub, and moves into Lloyd's spare room.
He won't take his wedding ring back.
He doesn't even take his wedding ring back.
No, he wants to keep that burning hope alive.
So straight away, Harry Mason's round, sniffing around Liz, but she refuses to jump into bed with him straight away and sends him packing. Vernon, meanwhile, tries to put a brave face on things in his life without Liz, life after Liz, but the breakup has really hit him hard. And Liz says, look, honestly, we'll be friends, but that is not enough for him. So in a last-ditch attempt to win her affections, well, I don't know whether I'd do this, but he writes her another song. And this song, if you haven't seen, it's available on YouTube. There's a 3-4 minute long scene where he sings this song called brackets, don't fall into close brackets, the Mason's Arms, and it was really well written.
It was good. It was great. And he performed it really well.
Yeah. Ian Reddington was a decent singer.
Yep.
And it's this hopeless romantic song of I thought that our lives would be perfect together, but actually now it's fallen apart before I even realised what was going on, and now is it too late? And it's he sung it so heartbreakingly.
I don't think we would be in trouble to put a tiny clip in.
Do you reckon we can get a little bit in? Oh, that means I've got to do a bit of extra work.
I know you do, but I think it's just a little clip. I don't think anyone's going to mind.
Okay, so
maybe
I'm risking demonetisation on the YouTube here, Gemma. I got your permission for it. So here's a little clip.
I think we can skip
Don't fall into the
23 pence that we would have made on this video.
Here it is.
When you said I do, I guess your heart wasn't in it. When you said not now, I knew I'd never win it. But there's danger at the bar flap. You know I mean the tall chap. Don't you fall into the Mason's arms.
Well, I hope I remember to put this, otherwise there's just a pause there now. People really enjoyed this, and I think we're probably quite surprised to hear a whole song sung on Coronation Street so well performed.
That's the point to hammer home here. It wasn't like
an original.
It was original. It was, it was scored. It was written. It wasn't just Kurt going arseholes on the stage, which was admittedly hilarious. It was a whole song, and I loved it. I remember watching it, and we watched it again not that long ago, and I can't remember why we did, but it's probably the best original song ever performed on Coronation Street.
Well, Brett Falcon is going to fight you for that one.
Brett Falcon can meet me outside.
Ian Reddington at the time was kind of saying, everybody loved this, we're going to see if we can release it in time for Christmas, it'd be lovely to see it at Christmas. Number one, it wasn't.
Sadly, in 2008, I don't know whether the novelty Christmas song was quite a thing.
I don't think Coronation Street themed singles were a thing in 2008, I'll tell you that.
I don't think they've
Although
ever
the Harry Hill Ken Barlow song was
that
only a few years away.
One.
So last ditch attempt to save their marriage, Vernon writes Liz a really...
He hires a ghostwriter for a
to
love
write
letter.
a love letter to her. He gets ChatGPT to do it. Sets up his drums outside the Rovers to try and get her attention. Doesn't work, and he leaves for London alone. Sad times.
If you're going to write somebody a song and they still won't shag you, then
that's when you know it's over.
Just give up. Even I would think again if you wrote me a song.
Yeah. Well, it was.
Who knows what I would forgive
almost.
Michael.
It almost could have worked though, because Liz finds out just as he's about to leave that Harry is two-timing her, so she realises what a terrible mistake she's made letting Vernon go.
No.
She goes to chase after him, but it's too late. He's gone, and she's like, nah.
Well, the thing is about Liz,
is
that she only thought of made a mistake here when it turned out that the guy she was trying to shag didn't want to shag her back.
And now she's on her own again.
Exactly. Come on, Liz.
So that was it. And there were reports earlier on in 2008 that there would be several characters axed, and Vernon was one of them. This was the new producer, Kim Crowther, came in, and I'm not going to say she made poor decisions, because the Mortons, the Masons and Vernon, I think they were...
Who's the Masons?
Dan and Harry Mason.
Who are they again?
They were the bookies. Dan Mason was the guy who...
I'm better with faces.
Steve trapped down the stairs in the Rovers and he broke his arm there or something like that. The Mortons, you know who they were.
Okay, there's a guy
Forgettable family
from
of number
Silent
6.
Hill that's called Harry Mason, so I'm going to take a bit longer to look.
So she came in and did a bit of dead wood clearing
Who's the other
out.
Guy? Harry Mason and...
Dan Mason.
Okay, and which was the one that was trying to...
Harry Mason was the
I remember.
Was the guy that Liz was going after.
I'm sure I'm not the only one who doesn't necessarily remember the name of the
I started
character.
off the episode saying who remembers Vernon, who loves... I think people do remember him.
Dan Mason was in 108 episodes.
Oh, okay,
so
there we go. Good fact finding. But no, people do remember Vernon. I think people have got a soft spot for Vernon, but I challenge anybody to have a soft spot for Dan and Harry Mason, apart from Liz. Anyway, she said at the time, Coronation Street, Kim Crowther, Coronation Street has always been a tradition of characters who come in to play out storylines beside established characters before moving on. As in any community, there are people who live there for years and people who pass through. We still have some interesting storylines to play with these characters, and they're very talented actors, and we wish them well.
I like that.
Do you think that's what she said to them when she called them into the office and was like, right, Mortons, Masons, and
it feels like this. It feels like she said.
It's just the way it is.
Oh, I've read that out loud, but I was just going to write that in the card.
I think wasn't Kim Crowther the producer that got up people's noses, and then Phil Collinson came in and replaced her afterwards for the 50th. Wow. I'm going to maybe say that that's true, but I've really got not very good knowledge of Corrie producers and their
I think she's great because she's a lady.
Yeah. Anyway, that was the last we saw of Vernon. Ian Reddington himself has done loads of TV and theatre and short film work since. Looking at his IMDb page, he's got a couple of things there every year. So he's a very busy chap. He's been in Doctors, he's been in Vera, he was in a couple of episodes of Benidorm, I think.
Love it.
And even in 2017, he joined fellow Corrie alumnus Deborah Stevenson, who played Frankie Baldwin, on stage in the Son of a Preacher Man musical tour.
He's
so
got
he
the
still
pipes.
kept... Yeah, those musical roots, and I guess that's what he's doing now. I don't know.
I'm just jealous of anyone who can sing. I wish ill upon you because I'm jealous.
Yeah,
This is the thing. This is how much I love singing. If I had 3 wishes from a genie's lamp, one of them would be I wish I could sing. That's how much I love singing.
Did I tell you that one of the other teachers at school the other day told me that I sing quite well?
You do sing quite well.
I'm all right.
I hate you too.
I'm no Vernon Tomlin, but
I know.
I am more than a
Where's
Gemma
my
Cox.
song? How dare you? Where's my song then?
I love singing. Singing is what makes me happy.
Yeah, it makes me happy too, but I sound like a cow stuck in a well.
Here's an interesting Vernon Tomlin related fact.
I was fishing.
No, you love
but
me,
I
darling.
noticed that there was no compliment that came.
Simon Cowell would sign you up in an instant if only he could hear you.
As a novelty act.
I
didn't know cows could sing.
Wasn't he responsible for Mr. Blobby at number 1 back in 1995?
I can sing better than Mr. Blobby. But I think he's better. He's a better rapper.
2013, this was interesting, 25th of April, there was a petition on the UK government website to bring Vernon back to Coronation Street, and maybe this is somebody who's got Vernon as their favourite character, or maybe it was just Ian Reddington himself who put this out there.
This is what makes this country great.
So you can still see this. There's the text went, a petition...
Hang on. So if you're not from the UK, you can go on our government website, which incidentally is one of the best in the entire world.
So I hear.
Our UK government website. You can go on there and you could say, right, I've got a proposal to be debated in Parliament, and this is it. And if you get enough signatures, they literally have to discuss this in Parliament. Normally they'll just go, well, this is a stupid thing that people want us to talk about. Do we all agree this is stupid? And they say yes. But this is democracy in action.
Yes. So somebody wrote, a petition to bring back Vernon Tomlin, Ian Reddington, to the cobbles of Coronation Street.
Good.
His curly locks and cutting sideburns, coupled with beautiful tones gracing wondrous melodies, are missed in the Rovers.
Yeah.
After the crushing disappointment that has been Carl murdering Sunita Allahan, the street needs a bit of joy that can't simply be reached through Devendra's white funeral robes. Vernon, Ian Reddington, once displayed the passion needed to lure the enigmatic, celibate Liz McDonald, and needs to return and bring back the joy which once filled millions of viewers' evenings with laughter, warmth and music. # bring back Vern.
I agree.
And sadly, the government did not agree with this one, and it was rejected, according to on the website, with a quote saying it's about something that the UK government... I'm reading this really badly. This was rejected because it was something that the UK government or Parliament is not directly responsible for.
Well, this is news to me.
Thought? You can't choose what you want to happen on Coronation Street and get the Prime Minister to.
Well, this is why I'm not
going for you.
I'm not going for a government position because apparently you can't tell Coronation Street what to do.
No.
What's the point then? What's the point of being a Prime Minister? Okay, well, let's write to the King.
Yeah, I bet he'd have some clout,
Dear
wouldn't they?
King Charles.
Yeah.
Listen, buddy.
Bring back
You
Vern.
and Cams have got a job to do here and you're not holding up your end of it. Where is Vernon Tomlin? Who, you ask? Well, your mum would have known. That's all I'm saying.
I think that probably now is past the time for Vernon to come back. I mean, Steve is still there. But
okay, my pitch.
Yeah.
How to bring Vernon back to the show. Similar way to how they brought back Dennis Tanner. He turns up destitute, and the only person he can think of who can help him in his hour of need is his ex-wife's son, aka my stepson, Steve McDonald. That would totally be in character of him to turn up with not a penny to his name at retirement age, needing somewhere to live and somebody to feed him, and thinking that because he once shagged his mum, Steve owes him a bed for the night. Don't you think that would be perfect?
That could work. I think as, if you were watching back then, you'd probably find it quite enjoyable. I'm not sure whether new viewers would particularly take to him, but I'd rather have him back than... Well, there's probably a few comebacks.
I don't think you need to know the background history of Vernon Tomlin to get that story. I pitched it in like 2 sentences.
I might be quite interested to see how Vernon and Tim got on. And like you said, now that Steve has become a bit more of a feckless layabout himself than he maybe once was 15 years ago, maybe he'd be like, you know, I got you wrong all that time, Vernon. You're actually a proper stand-up awesome bloke.
Steve is one of the few self-made men on Corrie.
Right.
Do you not think so? I mean, he's got his business. I'm trying to think of how he got it. I think Dev is the same. But quite a lot of people on Corrie who have a business shag their way to the top. And, Vernon missed out. I think he's owed it.
He thinks he's owed it.
Who would fall for him? Jenny.
I thought, maybe Jenny. I don't think they'd be suited at all.
I think he's probably a bit too old for her. But
possibly.
Him turning up and singing her a song, she'd melt, wouldn't she?
Well, what about Bernie? We could have Vernon Burn.
Vernon Burn, they're both romantic souls.
I think that Dev versus Vernon could be quite fun.
I bet he's got a collection of crystals. Don't you?
Or we'd soon get them if we realised that it might give him a chance.
We could get a couple of weeks of great action out of Vernon as he interacts with all these characters, with his crystals and his womanising and his songs.
Yeah. Okay, I've been convinced.
I think he's all right. I liked him. I think it was obviously never meant to be a long-term character. He had limited use on the street if he wasn't going out with Liz.
I think
he's got a lot more fingers in pies than some people who've lasted longer than he has.
Yeah,
and he was a great actor. I think he was a brilliant performer.
He played the part of an utterly useless layabout really, really well.
Yes.
And I think
who knows?
You've got to kind of separate I don't like him because he's useless from actually he's supposed to be useless and that's what makes him good.
Listen, not everybody... It would be boring if everyone was fantastic and competent and etc.
Well, I think over the course of the last hour I've had my opinion on Vernon changed a little bit. Yeah,
well, I went into this going, I thought Vernon was a bit of fun.
He was a bit useless, but I
don't care. I think as a useless person myself, I'm going to stand up for us. Like I said...
Well, there we go.
Like I said, in a capitalist society... Produce, don't consume, and that he was the epitome of that. Congratulations, Vernon, you are environmentally friendly.
Well, there we go. There is Vernon. He lives on through Tim, I'm gonna say, and
an over hour-long podcast on Conversation
Yeah, that's
Street.
more than a lot of other characters. I'll tell you
I'll tell you what, bigger characters than he.
Many bigger characters. I've had about 20 minutes back in the early days. We'll rectify that at some point in the future. But anyway, I think that's
Thank you for listening.
pretty much it.
Write in your favourite Vernon moments, and if you can do that in the format of a song, please record it and send it as a
Send us the sheet music and I'll sing it for you.
Oh yeah, there you go. That's a challenge.